Hello everyone and welcome back to our podcast, The Muzzles Up. This is my co-host Martin and I'm Cassie. And today's topic is the puppy class.
Oh. The dreaded puppy class.
Indeed. I think it's one of those things that we all, when we get a puppy, think, right, this is what I do next. This is the next steps, first adventures, first training. We go puppy class, puppy socialization.
It's the first thing that my mum said to me when I got my first dog was, you can take it to puppy classes, you can do their puppy classes. Everyone knows, you don't have to know a lot about dogs, but you can all know that there are such things as puppy classes.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone has a really good idea of what goes on in them. They just know that that's what you do.
And I think you find that most people do them, enjoy doing it, but then the second they finish puppy classes, the amount of people I find that then transfer that stuff is almost non-existent, which is strange.
But it's also that idea of that one class a week is enough, but the practice is done in that class and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main focus for me is the socialisation before vaccines. It's something I'm so passionate about because it does need to be done right, it does need to be done safely, but it does also need to be done, I find. Yes, you can get away with it with some dogs, but actually other puppies, my current foster, if I hadn't done that with her, I think she would have really struggled.
She wouldn't have known what to do with herself. And I think that's such a crucial time. I think as trainers, that's your responsibility then to manage that situation to the highest possible standard, because you're going to set all those dogs up for a really successful kind of future.
I think it's also really important to remember that those kind of classes are more about the owner, because your dog is not going to learn that much in that hour, 45 minutes of training that you do.
Especially in that environment.
Exactly, so it's about you learning how to handle and how to teach so you can then go home and progress it. As I think it's a lot of the time I see owners go to puppy classes and they work really hard in them and they really try their best. So you can see their dogs are really smart, really outgoing, really keen to learn, but they don't use it at home. So the main part of puppy classes that I think is really important is actually explain to owners why we teach things. Because we all know why that a dog should know sit kind of thing. Like it's like a genuine general knowledge basically. But actually, why? When do we use sit? Because so many times we then get an owner that comes to us at 4 or 5 months and they're like, I've been going to puppy classes, but my dog just keeps jumping at me. I think, well, have you asked your dog to sit, for example? Just seeing whether the dog's out, what they've tried, etc. They've just never thought of it. So it seems so simple to us as trainers, I think, or people that have had dogs before, but a lot of the time, I think that explanation and that owner learning is so crucial.
I think there's an element of a lot of owners where they don't get explained and the trainer just expects everyone to know. But also I think that the idea of puppy classes are, let's get through this syllabus and that's it, but it's not like a bigger picture. So then when we meet people for our one-to-ones and we're saying to them, what does your dog know? They can go, oh, they know all these different things. They know how to heel, they know how to do sit, down, paw. Yeah, and it's like, well, okay, how is touch a useful cue for you in your day-to-day life? And they're like, I don't know, just knows it. And it's like, that's the bit that's the step that's missing. And then actually that touch cue could be a really great way to get them to feel calmer around dogs or feel better at the vets. And it's not, I just find that that's something that a lot of puppy classes miss because they're so focused on, okay, here's my 6 puppies that I've got, let's now hammer the obedience and then I'll go home.
But at the same time, I think it's down to a lot of owners that I meet don't tend to seek help with training until there's something actually going wrong. And I mean, we've met loads of lovely owners that before even the puppy gets home, they're like, what do I do? How do I do it? And that's incredible. But it's really important that I think the idea of training is more generalised because all dogs need to learn how to be in this world. This world's so complicated to them because they're not born knowing what everything is, and to them natural instincts and things like that just, jump here, steal this, do that. That's a dog just having fun. Mm-hmm. And then they go home with the owner, they begin showing these signs and it's just like, what am I doing here? So they can really be taught and shown better ways of doing things so early on that they don't then practice the behaviours that come naturally to them, if that makes sense, because they already have outlets for those
I think it's just less glamorous. And I think that's the bit that gets missed. It's glamorous when you teach these dogs and you've got all this tangible evidence of, well, your dog now knows sit, down, touch, wait, all these different things. Even if it doesn't know it really well, the trainer can say, well, your dog now knows all these different things from this syllabus. Whereas actually, spending the time to be able to teach them how to greet other dogs, why only greetings aren't the safest way of doing things, why stop, like teaching your dog to not jump up can be really helpful, why you're teaching them touch, so why when they go to the vets they can have a way of being able to consent. All these different bits and remits and parts of the training that isn't tangible, but it's also really useful information that even though owners aren't asking for it necessarily in the moment, you know they're going to be asking for it in the future.
But you don't ask something you don't know. Like, nobody, I don't like come home and think, is the oven on? I don't know, there's just a weird one, I don't do much cooking. But it's like, I don't come home and ask that because it's not something I'm looking for, like I just have an assumption.
Yeah.
So if my puppy is not showing signs of, let's say, fear, to me, well, actually, like spaniels are so good at being so fast and speedy and excitable. They rush into these situations so quickly, and then all of a sudden you have a dog that's potentially nipped someone. And you think, well, what do you mean you're so happy?
And they don't even think about it, but they were just
No.
in the moment and then they rush through all the different situations and
Yeah.
things happen. And I think that it's just, I think it's almost like you wouldn't have kids go to school and then half teach them things. Or it's like the whole thing about how everyone talks about how, like, you don't really get taught how to do a lot of life skills, like in a maths class. You're taught how to find X, you're taught how to do like algebra, but you're not taught how to, this is a whole different thing altogether, but like you're not taught how to do taxes, or you're not taught how interest rates work and things like that. Things that would actually in the long term really benefit children, because then they'd actually have a working idea about how life and civilization works when they leave school, as opposed to, well, I can find X if A is this and B is that. It's not useful information, but it's almost picking out what is the most useful for those students. And it could just be a case of like lower set students would learn the more real life stuff, because like, let's say the higher up, like the ones near the top set, they could figure that out themselves. I don't know. Thankfully I don't have to make those decisions.
I mean,
but
Marcia did used to be a teacher, but I think it's also one of those things where I think it's knowing breeds and dogs and being able to generalize, but also understand through the dog what they're liking and enjoying. Because I know for a fact that a lot of people are really impressed that they'll get a Malinois, let's say. I mean, don't get a Malinois for a pet house, but they do, and they're like, oh, my dog's really smart, like it does everything, and it will. But then you've got the owner with the pointer, and they're like, my dog's not interested at all. And yes, they still have to learn the same key skills like recall, for example, because absolutely it's key, and safety is so important. But you're going to do that through different ways, because that Mally right there is so driven through things we can offer it, as the pointer is everywhere else but with the human. And it's something that has to be taught. And it's just knowing how to embrace those different parts, because neither's harder to train. They just need a different outlet. They need a different way to be shown and given information, and also different enrichment and things like that. Like, it's so important to understand the dog that's in front of you. And yes, absolutely being guided by breed stereotypes and what their genetic predisposition is, but on top of that, being able to see that, you know what, this dog actually doesn't really want to do that. And then being able to go around it and give owners advice. But I also think that alongside puppy classes, one-to-ones are super important to be able to get more of that generalised knowledge for your own dog. But the main topic of today is the socialisation part and puppy parties. That's what we want to discuss.
yes, puppy parties are a whole different kettle of fish. They are trouble. But they're packaged as this really sweet, innocent, fun time for your dogs, when really it's most dogs' worst nightmare.
Well, in a group of puppies, usually you'll have a bully, and you'll have a really timid dog, and then there's like a load of stuff in between. And when you have that, the puppy that's a bully is gonna have a really great time. But what we don't think about is, yes, you're socialising your puppy, but one puppy is learning the dogs are really scary. Big dogs especially, because if it's small, they're really scary to them. But then the bully puppy is, let's say you've got a really outgoing Labrador, and or a Staffy, let's say, one of those, and they're both quite mouthy as puppies, you know, really, they can play quite hardcore. When you have a dog like that go into that space with, let's say, a little Whippet or even a Cockapoo, and they're playing in their own style, they're just not a good match most of the time. So the way they would play would be so reinforced that throughout, when they're little, it was going to be fine because they're puppies, they're not going to do much harm. But then they hit that teenage stage, and all of a sudden they're causing a lot of trouble. They're also getting themselves into trouble because they never learned how to properly read body language, to slow down, to know when a dog wants to say no and wants to say yes. Like, all of that plays into it. So there's nothing wrong with a different play style. Like my retriever, for example, she plays like a complete dinosaur. Like, she loves mad visitors, mad labs, mad staffies, anything that's just gonna,
better,
yeah, just really give her a good going. But I also know that she won't engage with many dogs unless they really engage with her. But that's something I really had to work through when she was young, because she didn't know where the line was.
I think that again comes down to puppy parties teach owners really bad habits, because you'll probably find that those ones that are in the puppy party will then walk into groups of dogs and have their dog just there pulling towards getting to all of them, or it will put their dog into an uncomfortable situation that you can tell the dog isn't comfortable with, but because of the idea that they think, okay, well, if the dog with other dogs is happy, they put their dog in the situation, and most of them then transfer to things like a daycare, because they think, my dog had such a wonderful time, and they're so tired from that experience that now let's send them off to daycare, because that's like a puppy party but dialed up by 1,000,000. All you're going to really have then is a dog that is perpetually stressed multiple times in a week, comes home knackered because it's been terrified for hours.
That's it, and stress can be positive and negative. Like, you have all of the different personalities, and some dogs will absolutely not thrive in that environment, and others will get so exhausted and hyperactive that they'll actually struggle to then relax.
It's true. Again, it's almost like going to the gym. That's a positive stress you put in your body. But I just think that in puppy parties, at the end of it, the people that run it usually go, "Oh, your dog's had a great time. Now we'd like to buy some of the stuff that we've got around." And then they go, and then you kind of get the idea in your head of, "Oh, my dog must have had a great time. I like that for them." But actually, again, it's the people that organise it, the people that run it, need to be able to step in and say, "Do you know what? Your dog is not having a good time here," and ask them to do something about it. And if they do, they do. If not, they don't. But it's the way that we leave owners so uneducated in certain areas to a point where, like, they can't make a decision because they don't have the information. It's amazing how many owners we meet where we talk to them about really fundamental things, but because there's no one that's been brave enough to say, "Look, do you know what, you need to do this, you need to do that," they just don't know it. And then for them, they feel guilty because they go, "Well, that seems really obvious," and yeah, it seems that way, but it's not, because most owners don't recognise it because of the fact that they never get told it.
I completely agree, and it's one of those things that we often think, "Oh, they're just being a puppy." You have to remember that your puppy is going to grow into behaviours. They're not going to grow out of them. I don't know where this came from. It's just not going to happen. Your puppy is going to become a master at whatever it practices, and is going to learn autopilot responses like I see person, I jump, that kind of behaviour. So, like, when it turns into dogs, they think, "Oh, I see a dog in the park, I run over and say hello," because that's what it's done whenever it's seen a dog as a youngster. So what we want to do is, I always say to my clients, what do you want your puppy to do? And as it grows, when you're out in the field walking or out in the woods, what do you want your dog to do when it sees another dog? And in that moment, to me, I would say the ideal is have a neutral response, which is, if you cross paths, absolutely have a bum sniff, maybe even a play. I'm really not against dog socialising. I'm just against this obsessiveness.
I think that's what a lot of owners miss. Is that we say to them, okay, well, you're not going to play with that dog, or let's start from scratch and let's re-limit the dog interaction, and then they get the perception of, oh, we don't want them to play. It's not that at all. I think healthy play is fantastic. I think, yeah, okay, I would rather my dogs wanted to focus on me, but if I wanted my dogs to be social and go with other dogs, I know exactly how I'd want to go about doing it in a way that also benefits my dog.
But then also, we're pet trainers, aren't we? Like, I pride myself in, especially my Goldie, like, she's also so naughty. She gets the zoomies at the worst times, doesn't she? She's 5 now, so she doesn't really, like,
They don't
zoom
happen
about.
often, no, but they always happen when you don't need them.
And for me, it's like a moment of pure joy. Like, I am out of the room, my dog's having a zoom and I'm watching it. And she's just having a great time. Her tail proper goes into, like, zoomy mode. It's the most adorable thing ever. And it's one of those things where I know that I can ask her to stop, but I could also let her engage and do her thing. But it's also finding that balance. Like, I love that I can bring my dogs to a training session, and my dogs will not only teach my owners, but they'll also be able to interact and be good examples for the dogs that are training with us. But also on top of that, I can demonstrate with my dogs, and my owners actually see what I'm talking about. Because sometimes, I remember we were working with a Corso recently, and I was trying to demonstrate the difference between leave it and a weight with food, and the dog obviously didn't know the basics of it yet, so I demonstrated with Cinnamon, and it was just so much easier because then they could see what they were working towards. So I think having a well-balanced neutral dog is so important, because then you go to the pub and it's not a problem, you take them to the coffee shop, it's not an issue. It's just being able to take your dogs everywhere and then be neutral. And when it's time to be social, absolutely, they want to be, great, but some dogs will choose not to.
It's just having that control, and we're not like super control freaks, got to be by our side, but being able to say, look, not now, or later, or yeah, sure, go for it, why not? I don't think that's an unfair thing to do, because you wouldn't say to children, do whatever you want, you are completely free reign. Yes, you can talk to them in a different way, and you can actually make things make sense to them because you can give them elaborate sentences, but even then, when they're really young, it doesn't sink in, but you're then not going to hate your child for that, but people very quickly go to being very annoyed at their dog. And
then, you know better than that.
Or and it's like, well, you haven't been consistent enough, so how on earth does he know better than that, or she know better than that? And I just think that there's too much of that going on right now, and I think that's causing a lot of very confused dogs, but then a lot of frustrated owners, and it all stems from the fact of they're just given half of a picture, the prettiest side of a picture, but like the way that most or the puppy classes I know of teach recall is to walk away and then call your dog as you're walking away. And it's like, yeah, okay, as a puppy, you are set up for success because they're going to mostly be so nervous that they need to be with you because they need someone there for them. But once they reach that adolescent age, if they want to go see a dog and you've taught them that seeing dogs is fun and exciting and what they should do, they're not going to follow you anymore. They don't need you anymore, and from there, it just means that you lose that consistency from the recall, and because you haven't been taught a different way of being able to teach recall, you're then completely, like, you're lost at sea. You don't know how to get them back. You've not been taught how to use a long line or taught how to teach the pressure.
Or that you need a long line.
Yeah, then you're not going to have any of those tools at your disposal to be able to safely bring them back. And then what else do you do? Because you're like, okay, well now I'm stuck. And then you just have owners that can't recall their dogs, but they went to puppy classes, so they think they've done what they needed to do.
And the problem I find is the really social, outgoing dogs are glorified. So I mean, I think when the poodle mixes became really popular, a lot of them are really bouncy and outgoing and super happy and friendly, and I mean that's why people love them, right? It's their really happy nature. But that doesn't mean that my collie, for example, wants to interact, because he doesn't want to be jumped on, he doesn't want to be bothered.
No.
He wants his human, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's something I love about him, and most herding breeds will be the same. And it's one of those things where you also have, when you've got a herding dog, you have the nippiness there, so that's not a trait that a lot of other dogs will like, and that's something that my collie went through a lot. He would try and hold on to tails, and my gosh, that was not on. But it's just one of these things where we're prepared for it and we know what we're doing, but it's just being able to understand that alongside learning the basics of training, because sit, down, recall, lead walking, all that is incredible. But there is so much more to training, and I've seen so many amazing puppy classes that cover it all and go through it incredibly, and they do things like settling and calming exercises and rewarding choices and really teaching problem solving exercises rather than just the basic of this is how you teach sit. Because I see so often, you know, once you say sit to a dog and it doesn't do it, what do you do? Sit. And it's like, that's not how it goes. So the problem solving part is really, really important. But then you do have a really limited small time in the class.
Especially when you've got to deal with like 6 puppies. I think there are ways to be able to do it that, and some trainers do it fantastically. I think it's...
As an owner, you have to be empowered. You have to feel like you're learning, because there is no point you going there and just teaching a puppy, because if you don't know it, you're not going to be a good teacher. You need to have the skill to then you can go home and then practice lots, and I think that's so important, such a crucial part of it all. But just remembering the structure and remembering how it all goes, but also going to somewhere where it is using positive reinforcement and keeping puppies happy and understanding confidence, but also most importantly the social part. Because I think we personally have dealt with a lot of the puppies that went to puppy classes and got no guidance and ended up being extremely reactive. What am I talking about? Reactive through frustration? Like lead reactive?
Go for it.
I don't
know
know.
What?
I'm not professional anymore. I don't know what I'm talking about. So it basically, it just causes them to not be able to focus around that scenario, because all they do is they go to the puppy class, they lose their mind, they want to go play, then it becomes reinforced, and it's just mayhem.
So it's just a really vicious cycle that's always self-repeating as well, and you know each week they're going to do the exact same things as well, so it just reinforces it hugely.
So when you go to a puppy class, it's really, really important that some trainers will do social time, some trainers will say no social time, in the sense of remember that interaction is a very small part of socialization. So if you're more interested in that, there's more on our blog, on our website. But it's basically it's such a small portion of actually learning about the world. So when we see dog, we can do other things as well. We can walk past nicely and ignore it. We can sit, we can say hello politely, all the good stuff. And it just means that when we go to this class, that the trainer is able to teach the puppies and help you learn and help you teach, which means that it's not a play party. That's not what that's about at all. Which means that when you're going to your puppy session, you have to be really in the mindset of, as the trainer guides you to who's suitable for who, they'll assess sizing, they'll assess temperament, they'll assess behaviour, they'll assess the current state of mind as well. If your puppy is losing their mind, realistically that's not the best time for them to go say hello to the other puppies.
No,
so it's just finding a balance. Really. Yeah, but it's for me, when I have done puppy classes in the past, when I speak to my owners whilst their puppies are interacting, I talk about body language. So then the owner understands what to look for and what I'm looking for, because owners aren't taught that side, and you don't read dogs the same. You know, wagging tail means happy dog. It really does not always mean that.
No, it just activated dog, rouses up their thinking, and sometimes that can be to the detriment, not even to a positive for it. But again, in a puppy class, you sometimes don't even have time to think about that. So you see the wagging tail, you see the stiff body language, but if you aren't informed enough, if there's too many puppies there, or if it just happens really, really fast, you might find that there's a scuffle and a butting of heads, if that's how you want to call it, between those two dogs. And it's because of the fact that the body language was read as, oh, look how happy he is, his tail won't stop wagging. When actually it was I'm stressed, I don't like it here, I'm anxious. And then on top of that, he got nudged in the side, then that's going to cause a chain reaction that's really hard to then deal with.
I think a really good example of a nervous puppy is Zach George's videos with Inertia, when she was tiny. You know, the way she would hide under things, etc.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very good sign that in those moments, actually, that dog does not want pressure. It wants to observe and it wants to watch. So she seems pretty social now. He's actually doing a really good job. But it's one of those things where you watch that as a trainer. If I was his trainer at the time and he was just the average owner, I would be like, okay, we need to do a ton of confidence building. Right now, your dog is not wanting to interact. The last thing it needs is a Great Dane in space or a Mally in the play park. You know?
Yes, no, it's a very, very last thing they need.
So it's just finding that. But I think as a trainer, you also get away with a little bit more because you understand your dog, that you can do the back work. As an owner, you have to make sure that you're learning all the basics and learning what to read and what to do. So then you can provide your puppy with all the right information and you feel really confident. So I feel like we've done so many first walks with owners.
Oh,
like,
so
many first walks, and that's just because they're so scared. What if a dog runs at me? And
it's always those questions of, what do I do in this situation? What do I do in that situation? What do I do here? And each one of those ones, you can always just be, well, what would you do? And then they'll say something really obvious, like, oh, I'm just going to walk the other way, or, oh, I'm just going to reward that. And it's like, well, there you go, you've got the answer. Like, some of it isn't rocket science. It's just having that confident person next to you to say you're doing a great job.
And being confident in your choice, I find that a lot of the time owners question themselves. And when you're in that questioning mindset, you can't then guide your dog. So you have to trust yourself. And I love doing the first walks because we very rarely get far. We do quite a bit of confidence building, we do lots of watching, we do loads of assessment, we teach the owner how to use the long line, how to guide the puppy, etc. and then work through all that kind of stuff. And then they send us, videos from their walks and stuff, and it's so lovely.
And that's so helpful. Yeah, love it when an owner sends videos or they send any kind of information really, because again, we work with these people like once a week, and that isn't enough time to really be able to just do a lot of change in the sessions that we have. So it's the ability to then say, look, do this, do that, and knowing that owners will. So like even with certain owners, you can speak to them and they can be like, oh, that's great, but they won't actually do what you're asking them to do.
But then there's also overpiling, which Martin definitely averages us out, because I just want to info dump on everybody. I want to tell them everything so they can go away and know it, and that's not helpful. You will forget everything, which is why we record our sessions, so then we can send over the videos and the owners can watch it back and see what we're actually on about. But it's one of those things where making sure that they know what's important for their dog, because things that I would teach my puppies are not something that a lot of people would teach their puppies, because it's not necessary. So it's just making sure that you do it right and you're working with a trainer that makes you feel good, because that's what's important. You need to feel confident, feel good, feel like you're making progress, and that progress doesn't have to be super speedy. Progress is you feeling better about something or your dog understanding something, even if it means taking a step back. So management, so if a dog's reactive, let's say, and your puppy's really struggling and nervous, absolutely take a step back. That doesn't mean you're not making progress. That just means you're doing the right move for your puppy at that moment to then move forward.
And you're taking a step back so that you can jog forward through spaces. So sometimes just having that extra bit of reliability or just really working through that hinge. What happened?
You look like you're on something. Inside boy.
I don't know what I'm
Martin is just sleeping, guys, I promise.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hold it in. He's looking at me like.
It's been a long day.
Wait, is it 4 a.m?
Yeah.
Right. Well, we'll be finishing this up soon, I guess. But as Martin was saying, it's just. Sometimes moving a step back is going to move you forward faster. It's not about all the.
Well, it's the idea of sometimes we assume our dogs know things or our dogs are understanding of things. So even when in returns of socialization, you think they understand that you've allowed them to go and see those dogs. They've just made the decision and you say okay as they're walking, but they were already walking over there. Whereas if you could get your dog to sit, wait, watch the dogs and then release them in to go and say hello, that can give you a lot more kind of consistency and control. And also that way you've taken a step back because you haven't just let them do it and you haven't asked them to just wait whilst they're moving. You're saying, okay, let's take a step back, I'll ask you to sit, then I'll ask you to wait, and then I'll move forward that way. You'll probably find that you'll then have a lot more success going forward because of the fact that you've then set your dog up for success, not just you know what you're doing, so you can go ahead and do it.
Yeah, so I think the most important, we have gone everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely everywhere. We have not stayed on topic very well, but here we are. So I think the main thing is, I'm going to yawn. It's not that funny. Yeah, the main thing is with puppy socialization is remember that it's not about the interaction very often. I think it's very healthy for dogs to have friends, to know how to say hello, how to be neutral, but you do also have breed, genetics come into play. Some dogs will just not have that ability.
Mm-hmm.
Some dogs will be more nervous, some dogs will be more outgoing, some dogs will be more chatty about everything, and that's okay.
They're all so unique.
And it's completely normal for your dog not to be super social. Like my collie is very selective. That doesn't mean that I can't walk him without worry, because I can. He's not going to cause trouble, but he finds dogs that are really obnoxious and in his face, really just too much.
Mm-hmm.
He does not enjoy it, and he will want to then escalate and tell them off. And I don't want to practice that behaviour, so I just don't let it happen.
No.
So then I've got cues like Middle that are just life-saving, because I can, if I have to hold him and push the other dog away, I will. But it
just gives you that again. It gives you that bit more control.
Yeah.
He enjoys it. We've made sure that it's a cue that he enjoys, so he wants to do it anyway. But now we've got like a trust in that where we can control the space around them as well.
And then he's got, a lot of the time we have a toy with us. He does not want to share his toy, and I'm quite lucky with the fact that he doesn't actually escalate his behaviour that much in those situations. He will just back off and come to me. But I think that's the reinforcement history that he has. I think if he went to a different home, that would have actually been quite extreme with him.
Oh
because
yeah.
he is a resource guarder.
And he would have had the two different sides, and it would have just been a whole nightmare to be able to really work through.
But I would say he's really social. I actually think he is one of the most well-balanced dogs I know. Not because he loves everyone, but because he knows exactly how to cope with most situations, and then when it escalates to a dog jumping on him, I'd step in, and I tend to just make sure I prevent, like, if dogs are running over, I just get him in a down weight and then we do our thing. But it's one of those things that we have to just remember, that we don't want to glorify over socialization, and that is totally a thing.
Mm-hmm.
When we do any puppy puppy classes, when we do one-to-one puppy training, when you're doing your research and you're browsing online trying to figure out what to do, just remember that I want you to go look at the blog, and I did look at a pizza thing. Do you remember at the end?
It's a really, really, really lovely diagram that does a lot of explaining, and is actually very, very useful and eye-catching.
Yeah, so I write little books for our local vets, and that was the October?
September
edition. And it was just all about socialisation, and that plays a really good part into knowing how to actually focus on socialising, and how much of it all is playing, how much of it is interacting, how much of it is watching, and what you want to teach. So I think, and it sounds like a promo, it's quite, I write it so it's for all ages, if that makes sense. So if you're an adult, you can look at it and actually gain information, but if you're a child, you also become entertained, because it's got lots of pictures and fun colours. So it's meant to be fun, but I think it's so simple. So that's a really good one to look at. And if you're looking to start training with your dog, or are getting a dog and looking into what on earth are you going to do, just remember that they will go at their own pace. They will very much tell you exactly what they need and want. And if you're guided by a good professional, you will feel good. So trust who you're working with, and make sure that your dog looks happy, you're happy, and you feel like the welfare is a priority, but at the same time, you feel like your dog is learning how to be a happy, neutral citizen, I guess, rather than this obnoxious, outgoing, crazy dog, or obviously a dog that's really withdrawn and scared. Because dogs that are nervous, we can build their confidence. Dogs that are super confident and outgoing, we don't want to knock anything down. We just want to add control. So it's not about taking anything away or making your dog into a robot. I don't believe that at all. I think it's so beautiful that they come with all these personalities. It just doesn't make them worse when they don't want to be social.
No, 100%.
Yeah, and it doesn't make you any less of an owner. So stay confident, work with a really great trainer, and remember that puppy parties are just a bad idea.
Yes, that understatement of the century.